All right, for 7-1 operations on functions, I want to start by doing this little warm up. So please take a second and do numbers 1 through 4, and then I'll show the answers on the screen. All right, so now that you've had time to take a look at these, numbers 1 and 2, all you were doing were combining like terms. Remember with number 2, if you have a subtraction between it, you need to make sure that you subtract both things. So I always wrote it underneath just to help visualize that. On number 3, you are distributing, you're actually double distributing, but we would call that FOIL, right? And then number 4, when you're dividing these, hopefully we were able to figure out that we just needed to use synthetic. You could have factored and then taken away the x plus 3, but that's the route that I would go here, okay? Although in our notes today, we'll go a different. So for today, basically what's happening is we're doing that exact same thing, but we are going to do it in function notation, okay? So if you notice, these are a little bit different than what you just were working with, but they're pretty much the same thing, right? They give you something for f of x, and they give you something for g of x. So in the first one, you can see it written as either f of x plus g of x or f plus g of x. Okay, it's the exact same thing no matter which way that it's written. Saying take function f and function g and add them together. So in this case, we have x squared minus 4x minus 5 plus x plus 1. Okay, and we combine like that. So we would get x squared minus 3x minus. On the next one, same deal, okay? Whether it's written this way or this way, um, you're still taking f and you are subtracting g. Now, this is the one that people tend to do incorrectly, and that mainly stems from the fact that they forget to distribute. So we have x minus 4x minus 5 minus x plus 1. So you are subtracting all of g of x, so that is negative x minus 1. So when we combine like terms, x squared minus 5x minus 6. Then we move on to multiplying. So sometimes there's a dot between it there, sometimes there's a dot between it here. This one you have to be careful with, and you'll see towards the end, this can look a little different and it doesn't mean multiplication. But just keep in mind, it'll be a filled in dot. All right, so this time we are obviously foiling. All right, so we take x and distribute. We get x to the third minus 4x squared minus 5x, and then distribute to 1, which is x squared minus 4x minus 5. So combine like terms, x to the third minus 3x squared minus 9x minus. All right, and this is the one that's a little different. Okay, again, we can see it written this way or this way. Okay, both meaning the exact same thing, and we're just dividing it. Okay. Obviously, in our warm up, we decided we ended up using synthetic, and you can use synthetic. A lot of the time, you end up not being able to do that. So I'm okay right now. You just leaving it as a fraction. Okay. Because it's not always going to be something that you can use synthetic with. If you can, technically you should. But I'm honestly okay either way, and you'll see as we keep going that it is different. So for this one, when we would go, we would get negative 5, 5, 0. So it actually is a factor. So your final answer could have been x minus 5. Okay. I'm okay with either one of these. Technically, this is the most correct, but you'll see as we do more. All right. So I want to switch in and do these ones. Okay. And we will talk about the excluded values and restrictions after going over this. Okay. So go ahead. Just notice how there's F, G, and H. So pay attention to what mentions talking about each time. Okay. So give you about, I would pause it and say like 5 minutes. All right, so here are the answers to all of them. And number 1 and 2 should be quick to check. Number 3, you did have to FOIL with 3 terms, so that was the longest one that we've had to do before. So make sure that you got the right answer after you FOILed all 3. I did color coordinate it. Number 4, this is where the whole restricted values comes from. So if you notice, I say x cannot equal 2/3, right? And that's because your denominator can't equal 0. So essentially what we did was say, well, 3x minus 2 cannot equal 0. So 3x equals 2 and x equals 2/3, right? So that's where the x cannot equal 2/3 because you can't divide by 0. So it can't be that, okay? So that's what it's asking for with excluded values. You set the denominator equal to 0, and those are your excluded values, okay? And again, I can't do synthetic there because you can't do synthetic with one that has a number in front of an x. It always has to just be x plus or minus a number. And number 5 was a little different, and I wanted to just kind of recap that. Sometimes you'll have stuff like this in your homework. And for this, you actually had 2 different options. What I chose to do was plug in to the equation. So I already found in number 3, f times h, right? So this is saying find f times h of 3. So that means that they really just wanted you to plug 3 in. So you could have plugged 3 in for x, or remember you can do synthetic there. The option you actually have is to find f of 3 and then find h of 3 and then multiply those 2 numbers. Okay, so that's just another option for you if you wanted to go that route. If you were to do that, f of 3 would be 22. So you would take 22 and you would multiply it by -8. And that gives you the -176. Okay, so you could have gone that route instead and just plugged it into each individual equation, and that's totally fine. Most of the time that might be a little bit easier, so this might be the route that you want to go. All right, so that was the foundation of today, but now the big news. Now we're talking about compositions of functions, and this is talking about what we call is or graph. Okay, notice how these are kind of like multiplication, but it's not built in, right? So sometimes you'll see this, okay? And they mean the same thing, okay? This one's a little bit easier to visualize. Notice how g of x is taking the place of x, right? Normally you see f of x. Well, now it's f of g of x, right? Which just like when we have f of 3, 3 replaces x, so you plug in 3 for x, right? Same thing's going to happen here, except now g of x is taking place of x. So you're going to take that whole function and plug it in, okay? So first we're going to start with numbers, okay? So both of these are saying the same thing. They're saying fog or goth. They're just composition. So what I want you to do when you tackle these is focus on the middle, the inside one first. Okay, so let's just find the that would be 5 minus 2, right? Because g of x. These are the final answer. G of x. Well, now if you think about it, instead of x, g of 2, 3, right? Because g of 2. Now I just plug into the equation 2 times 3 squared. Now remember with this, oftentimes students do 2 times 3 then square it. Remember you have to do exponents first. So it's 9 times 2 is 18. Our final answer of 15. We're going to do the same thing on number 2, except it's written a little. You can still think about it as g of f of -3. Okay, based Basically what's happening is you always just do the one that's closest to it first. So let's find f of -3. So we have 2 times -3 squared minus 3. This ends up still giving me 18 because it would be a positive 2. And then when we subtract 3, you get 15, right? Now again, that means that now we actually have the 15. So 5 minus 15 for a final answer of -10. Do ones where we are just doing it without a variable or without a value now. Okay, so we're going to do 2 more problems and we're just going to find f of g of x and g of f of x. Okay, so go ahead and write it out for me with me. So for these ones, we are not able to actually plug in a value. So that really does mean you're just taking that whole function and plugging it in. Okay, so what's happening on the first one? If I'm taking g of x and I'm putting it in for x. So if f of x is 2 times x squared minus 3, my x becomes my g of x. So that's 5 minus x, right? Again, g of x is 5 minus x. So I am replacing x with that function. Now remember, whenever you have one like this, that means that you need to write that twice. And you have to FOIL. So we would get 25 minus 5x minus 5x plus x squared minus 3. And if we keep going, 2, 25 minus 10x plus x squared. Distribute the 2. And then we just have to combine like terms. So I'm going to put it in standard form. So 2x squared minus 20x plus 47. So number 4 is doing the same exact thing, except we are plugging f of x in for g of x. It might be beneficial to rewrite it because it's easier to see if you ask me. So this time, g of x is 5 minus x. So instead of writing 5 minus x, we are going to write 5 minus f of x, which is 2x squared minus 3. Okay, the only thing that people forget to do on this one is have that negative distributed to both. So this is really 5 minus 2x squared plus 3. Our final answer of, in standard form, negative 2x squared plus 8. Again, it doesn't matter what order you put it in unless I state that it has to be in standard form. We are going to do many more examples of this for days to come. So fog and GOF is a really big one, and we'll keep working with it.